Hello and welcome back to From the Be All End. And yes, it's that strange but very enjoyable feeling of doing a debrief on a Burnley victory. 2-0 win at Fulham. We're recording this pretty quickly after the match. I'm Simon Evans and with me is Andrew Greaves, Paul Woodhouse and Justin Conley. And well, chaps, that was a pleasant surprise, wasn't it? Greavesy, kick us off.
Yeah, and game of two halves. I know that's a massive cliche, but I think when we were all conversing at half time, I don't think we really expected, the performance or the result. But I mean, that second half performance, incredible, just fantastic. I mean, at both ends of the pitch, defensively strong, good in midfield. We'll get on to Sander Berge, I'm certain before long, but two brilliant strikes. Look what happens when you take a pot shot from outside the area rather than fanning about with it. Incredible, isn't it? But what a Christmas present. Fulham in good form. Won the last two games 5-0 at home. We were a bit fearful, I think, in the last podcast of, being on the end of the third one. I think Woody had the stat of when the last time a Premier League or top flight team won 3 games 5-0 at home on the trot. But they were a shadow of their first half self due to our performance second half, weren't they?
Yeah, a bit of a Burnley sort of thing, really, where they played quite well, and then as soon as they conceded, they disappeared from the game. Woody, you weren't particularly impressed with Fulham, I pick up.
They weren't. They weren't very good, were they? I mean, they didn't actually, for what they managed to do in the first half, they still didn't create a lot. And second half, you'd be awfully disappointed as a Fulham fan, and you'd also be slightly confused coming away from that, having lost it. I thought they were appalling second half. And so I'm in a moderate state of shock, to be honest with you.
Not that we really care about Fulham being appalling that much, do we?
No, we don't. No.
I mean, Justin, there was a lot to like about that though today, wasn't there?
I thought it was a wonderful performance. I have to say, I'm calling that as our best performance of the season so far because, even though we smashed 5 past Sheffield United, Fulham are a good side. And I've been playing really well, particularly at home, scoring a lot of goals. It's always difficult, isn't it, to measure up how much their performance was affected by the things that we did. But I thought the hope is now that Everton performance turns out to be a bit of a blip, that this now is the true form, because we went back to what we were doing before. That first half performance, I thought it was good. I thought we didn't do anything too stupid. There was a little bit of a few nervous moments when they had the ball, knocking it about at the back, but it just they were much more at it than they were against Everton. They were getting into tackles. They were picking up, second balls, all that sort of stuff, and it just shows what can happen, doesn't it? When we stayed in the game, we stayed in that game in a way we haven't done in other games, and we've got the players who can pull something out of the bag at the other end, but they're not going to do it if you're already 2 goals behind. So I was as impressed by what we did in the first half. It was a poor game, but I was as impressed by the way we defended, the way we stayed in the game, the way we just gave ourselves that platform for. And when the chances came, they took them, didn't they? And we've been saying it for months, haven't we? Keep in the game. Take your chances and you'll pick up points.
Yeah, I mean, there was, after a really good start, I thought the first 10, 15 minutes were super positive stuff. Then they had 2 or 3 chances. Trafford makes saves. And Trafford was absolutely faultless today. We have to say that. I mean, he had to make saves. There were no miracle saves, but they were saves he had to make, and he made them all. And faultless with his feet as well. We'll go through in a minute some of those individual performances, because there were some real standout performances from from some. Greavsey, who, if you were picking one, who would you pick out as the man who had the biggest influence on that victory?
Probably Sander Berger, to be honest. I think he just, as we've said, we know he can run games. First Premier League goal, it's what he's deserved. And he just picks the ball up. And I know at times, start of the season, I'm thinking to myself, he's just too soft. He flicks a leg out. He's not strong in a tackle. But he's getting stronger in the tackle. He's getting a little bit more aggressive. And when he gets into full flight, he just glides, doesn't he, with the ball at his feet. And that's a brilliant finish from him as well. Kind of probably hit it a stride or two earlier than Leno was perhaps expecting. And that's why it manages to kind of cut past him into the bottom corner. But yeah, for me, he's man of the match. And today was very much a kind of 7 and 8 out of 10 performance as opposed to a 4 and 5 performance against Everton. I remember, I think it was Chris said either on the podcast or on social media, there's no point playing ticky-tacky if you can't do the basics right. If you can't defend, if you can't string passes together, then all of this kind of fancy stuff that he wants us to play is pretty useless. And today we did all of that basic stuff really, really well for a big part of that game. 34% possession, I think we had in the end. So it's not all about possession, is it? If we look at the Everton possession, I think we had 60-odd% against Everton and got beat 2-0. Fulham have had 60-odd% of possession today and got beat 2-0. So it's not all about, in the Premier League, it's not about possession. It's about what you do with it. And they mentioned that on the World feed today. It's all right having all that possession if it's just in front of your own goal and things like that. But unless you're going to penetrate, unless you're going to make chances and take chances, it counts for nothing because you don't win games on possession, do you?
No. It has to be said, there was a spell in the second half where I think, in terms of fannying about at the back, that was probably our peak fannying of the season, because it was just like there was I think it was about a 12-pass move that went across the penalty area 3 or 4 times. There were probably 6 risky passes in it, and you just kept thinking this one's going to be a disaster, but we got away with it. But yeah, no, lots of good individual displays, weren't there? Woody, who caught your eye?
Well, besides Berger, for the same reasons as Greavsey's mentioned, bloody O'Shea managed to have some half-decent game. That 40-yard foray towards the end of the second half was preposterous after we were talking about Steve Davis endlessly between us. It was something else to see, but he got his anvil head on everything. He was blocking everything. Even his ridiculous half-long balls into channels were finding men. He looked solid. He looked sturdy, like had everybody in his pocket. So fair play to him. Can't really complain. But I think there was a little bit of overplaying going on. The fannying got me a little bit nervous halfway through the second half when we just continued to play weird triangles, Cruyff turns, whatever the fuck we wanted to do, thinking on some beach in Rio. And then thankfully Vincent got hold of the game by the scruff of the neck, made the right substitutions probably at the right time.
He did, didn't he?
Shored it up. Yeah, he did. Shored it up. So credit goes there because we saw it out extremely well, so...
Yeah. And I'm glad he took Trezor off and brought on. Was it Delcroix came on for him, wasn't it? Yeah. I'm glad he did that, because there's this weird thing in football that it's some huge insult to take someone off who's come on as a sub. But if it makes sense tactically to do that, and it totally made sense because he looked like a passenger at that time, Trezor, and certainly we couldn't afford any passengers at the end. It was the right move. I don't think it's an insult to Trezor. It's just like, this is what the team needs now, isn't it? It's Justin. Anyone stand out for you? We've had honourable mentions there for Sander Berger, who I think we'd all agree was man of the match, and I think Woody's absolutely spot on about Dar O'Shea. Who else catches your eye?
Totally agree on those two. I thought Vitinho had another really, really solid game. That call up to the Brazil squad is not too far away if he keeps doing that. Difficult to pick any player out that had a bad game. Actually, I thought Brun Larsen did okay. I thought obviously Odeberg did another one of those. Had another one of those stunners. Hard to pick anybody out who didn't work as hard as was necessary to get the job done. I feel a bit sorry for Trezor. I mean, he's clearly not a terrible player, is he? He's clearly not a bad player, and I just think the breaks haven't gone his way this season. I'd like to see what he's capable of if he gets a decent run in the side. So I was a bit disappointed that he didn't get a full run at it. But like you say, it was a moment where we've been critical, haven't we, of Kompany's substitutions, the changes that he makes and the time that he does it. So, for him to be a bit more proactive about it and one of the things we've really been critical of is the sort of management of the game, and I thought they got that spot on today, managing that last. And when you're 2-0 up away from home, you've got to expect an onslaught. I mean, you've got to expect a barrage, and that never really came. And I think that was down to what we were doing rather than what they were trying to do. So, I thought they all had great games. I'm still a bit. I thought Trafford had probably one of his better games for us. I didn't think his passing was as on point as you suggest it was. I thought he gave the ball away a couple of times, and I'm still not happy with this. I think it's a modern trend with goalkeepers not to be catching the ball as much as they should be, as far as I can tell. There were a couple of occasions where, even though he's got that sort of 2-3 feet extra height with his hands, he still seems to be challenging for the ball in people's faces with his punching. And I want him to take the jeopardy away immediately when the ball's across him by catching it more often rather than sort of, pushing it out somewhere. But that's a bit of a small niggle.
I think they're coached to do that now, though.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
I think, in fact, did the Beast mention it when he was on this show? I think he was saying that the balls, these lighter balls that move faster, that they're just taking that risk of a messed up attempt to catch out of it and going for the punch much more often and being encouraged to do so. But he doesn't look convinced. Like that one he saved and he looped up in the air and there was a crowd of players in there. I mean, he got in there, to be fair, but he does.
Yeah, he got it away in the end.
That little fist going in there, doesn't it? But
yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought he was good. Brownhill got around the field really well, didn't he? He put himself about. I thought he was a busy performance from him. Lyle Foster. Amdouni's another one. I mean, let's talk about Amdouni for a minute, because for me, he just strikes me at the moment. You can see the talent there. You can see the close control he's got and the speed and the ability to suddenly, change the tempo of the game is there. But nothing seems to come off for him. He's like, everything's nearly really, really good for him, whether it be a shot or a pass that he's looking to put through. I don't know. I mean, are we going to see Greavesy? Do you think we're going to see like Amdouni suddenly make a breakthrough where things start happening for him?
It's a weird one, isn't it? Because I think you're right. I think you see flashes, and I think the Arsenal game was the one where he kind of turned on a sixpence and suddenly 3 Arsenal players were out the game. But then it's a ball into somebody who can't control it, things like that. I also don't think he works as hard, perhaps, off the ball as someone like Trezor. We've mentioned Trezor. I think one of the things he does, which doesn't get picked up, is he does work hard off the ball to get another body back in front. So I wonder whether we might see Amdouni drop out for Trezor and Trezor play that kind of free role, number 10 kind of role, because I think that's probably his favoured position, isn't he? So I think the biggest thing with Trezor is he probably needs a start, a bit like Odegaard. I mean, Odegaard's got, 3 goals in 5 starts?
Yeah.
Which is incredible. I think he's the top Premier League goal scorer for us now, isn't he? 3 goals. But yeah, Lyle Foster, I thought did well. I thought he came back and he almost kind of helps free up Amdouni a bit more than perhaps Jay's done. I know Jay did against Sheffield United, but we didn't really see it. Struggling to find a player who didn't kind of perform well, I would probably put Amdouni into that category. I don't think he had a great game today. And it feels like we're being really, really picky on the back of a 2-0 win, doesn't it? But yeah, I really, really like Amdouni. But it is just spells, and we just can't have players disappearing, I don't think, for as long as Amdouni does in games. Not if the off-the-ball, out-of-possession work rate's not quite there, and I don't think it's quite there yet with Amdouni. I don't think he's quite used to the pace of the Premier League when we've not got the ball.
Yeah, I think there were times when Amdouni was a bit unfortunate that, like, his partnership with Foster has had that little hiatus, because Foster's a different kind of player to J-Rod when he's holding the ball up. He does like his little neat sort of flicks and back heels and so on. I don't think Amdouni was quite ready for a lot of those sort of little balls around the corner that Foster was playing. So I think we've talked a lot in the past about it being about partnerships, and I think that partnership has definitely got something going for it. But they just need to play together a bit more and get used to the kind of work each other is doing both on and off the ball. So I'm a bit more forgiving for Amdouni today, because I think that partnership has got a massive potential, but the things that they were doing today together weren't quite clicking. When they do click, I think they'll be a real force to be reckoned with as a partnership, those two.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where I wouldn't leave him out, because I think it's one of those where you just have to keep playing a player like that. I think because he's showing the talent, and I think it will come off for him eventually, and those relationships will build and everything. And I certainly wouldn't be putting Trezor in there on the basis of what we've seen as a sub, because I just think he's off the pace. I think that's the biggest problem with him. He's not up to the speed of the Premier League. Now, you can say there's only one way you can get up to speed with the Premier League, and that's playing in it, and that's a fair point. But we're not in the position to be carrying people while we do that, really. I mean, looking at the bottom of the table
so far, though, has it? If you think about it, I mean, that's been the whole kind of MO, hasn't it? Just kind of like players gaining experience despite us being shite for the first kind of whatever number of games. I agree with you. I think, I just think Trezor is definitely going to be one of them players that, a bit like Odebear, now he's had a bit of a run in the side, a bit like Koleosho, we'll start to see all the kind of glimpses that we've seen will start to become more and more consistent over a longer period. And actually, it's quite good to see him get almost a full 45 minutes today, rather than coming on and having 7 or 8 minutes to try and impress and try and break into side, because I don't think that really works for players, does it? I mean, some players, Nathan Redmond's a bit older, a bit wiser, a bit kind of probably knows he's going to come in, do a job, and then probably not play for the next 2 or 3 games. But with like a Trezor or a Odebar or a younger player, there's almost that kind of, they're desperate to kind of keep a place or win a place, and kind of 2 minutes of injury time is never going to be enough for that player to kind of win that place back. And I just think, I'm not saying I'd throw him in against Liverpool, obviously, but I'd probably throw him in against Liverpool.
The commentators' notes on Mike Trezor never change, though, do they? Every time he comes on, they go, Player of the Year in Belgium last season, record number of assists, an unbelievable 24 assists in a season. Yeah. It'd be good if he starts to get some Premier League stats to talk about as well. The only disappointment today is that Luton have gone and won against Newcastle, a surprise victory. So just looking at the bottom of the table, we're off the bottom. Sheffield United are on 9 points. We're on 11. Luton are on 12. Notts Forest are on 14 after they lost at home towards Bournemouth. Managerless, Nuno's going in, isn't he? Has he gone in already, Nuno? Has he been unveiled?
Yeah, I think he's already there,
Yeah. So, and then Everton on 16 after they lost at Spurs. And then it's Palace on 18. Palace? I don't know.
Yeah.
Did Palace start to get thrown into it,
Yeah, of course they could. I mean, what we said, wasn't it, was that we want to make sure we're still in touch by Christmas. If we hadn't won that, if we'd lost today, the picture would have been very different to how it looks now, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But we're 3 points away from getting out of the relegation zone. We're 3 points behind Nottingham Forest. Our goal difference is worse, but we're still in touch, is what I'm saying. We're still in touch with that. And if you'd asked me sort of a month ago if I would have taken this, I would say, yes, because I think we're going to pick up a lot more points in the second half of the season than we did in the first. Today, has really cemented that view for me that we're going to go to these sorts of places and put in these kinds of performances. So 3 points off getting out of this. We're still in. I think we'd be better off just not worrying about relegation at all, not looking at the table and just taking each game as it comes and just going, enjoying it for what it is. I think the second half of the season will be better than the first. Whether we've left it too late or not, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. We all said that, didn't we? If we can be in touch at Christmas, who knows what could happen? And Woody, we are in touch at Christmas. Are you feeling a little bit of positivity after a victory that maybe we can crawl our way out of this, or are we just getting carried away after one win?
Well, both, isn't it? I mean, we've only got another week to go and see where we are then. We could be quite easily out of the relegation zone, or we could be where we still are, or we could be rock bottom. You know, it's as obvious as that. But yeah, if you're going to sneak wins like this, then I do think, like Justin says, the second half of the season, there could be something very, very interesting to play for. So fuck it, let's go for it. We play like there's not really much fear there. You know, we're going to play this champagne football to the end of the season. Let's, like Justin says, enjoy this ride and see where it goes.
Yeah, that's the spirit. Yeah, Liverpool next. I mean, sooner or later, there's going to be a game where, you know, if you survive in the Premier League, you have those games like that win at Chelsea. You have those games like that win at Old Trafford. Mm-hmm. You want one or two of those in a season to pop up, don't you? Liverpool, they're actually playing while we record this, so we'll ignore that. But whatever happens in that game against Arsenal, they're going into Boxing Day after a very difficult test in 90 minutes against a top side. I mean, dare I say it, it's a good time to play.
Absolutely screwed us over there, hasn't he? I mean, he's prone to that.
Why have you done that?
Burnley 4, Chelsea 1. Can you remember that one, lads? Christ, oh man. It would be good to stick one over the dick, though, wouldn't it? You know what I mean? Let's be honest. You know, he's a bit of a dick. You don't want to spend Christmas in Burnley. Well, tough shit, pal, because you're coming to us on the back of a 2-0 win at Fulham. But this is the thing, it's that consistency. Yeah. We've had results, then we've come and got beat by Everton. You think, oh Christ, we've kind of, you know, every time we've won, we've not been able to follow that up. Then, you know, I think after Luton, the win at Luton, did we have Man United? Again, best time to play them. I should say, for fans of stats, we've scored the same amount of goals this season as Man United. I think that probably tells you more about Man United than us. And they've also lost 13 games before Christmas for the first time since 1930. So probably not the best stat to pull out. But
no, it's an interesting one, though, isn't it?
It's tough at the top, isn't it? You know what I mean? It is for a team that has spent God knows how much assembling. I mean, we talked about, you know, Vincent spending 100 million quid or 120 million quid on, you know, lots and lots of different players. I mean, they had Højlund up front, and they'd have been better off with Jamie Højlund up front today, because that guy's had one decent season in Serie A, and he's no more a footballer than Anthony is. And I think I'm.
He reminds me of one of our first Belgian signings, Vossen.
Vossen, yeah,
Jelly Vossen. Yeah, didn't feature in any of the all-time favourites teams, but
never heard of him.
You know, he's better than Vossen, but he's having that same sort of nothing impact, isn't he?
He's not getting the ball, though, is he? They're not giving him the ball. That's the big problem. But
it's the modern United way, isn't it?
Yeah, spend 80 million on a player and then try and sort of freeze him out of the.
But it's all about possession, isn't it? I mean, Ten Hag after the game, we talked about we dominated, but we didn't score. Well, you can dominate all you like, pal, but if you don't score, you ain't going to win. But yeah, I think Liverpool obviously is a tough game, of course it is. But as they kept saying on the international feed, as Tony Gale kept saying, as Vincent Kompany kept saying, it's a weird time of year, isn't it? There's nothing to stop us, nothing to say we're not going to have an Old Trafford, a Stamford Bridge, a City at home. Yeah. I'm not going to utter those words that you've just uttered, Simon, about being a good time to play them. There's never a good time to play Liverpool. Let's be honest. They could turn it on like they did against West Ham midweek and smash us for 5. But it would be nice, wouldn't it? It would be nice. Given
it's just set up for that post-game Sky interview with Jurgen. You said Burnley's not a great place to come to on Boxing Day.
You can see the headlines, can't you? You can almost see Henry Winter in the Times. Jurgen Klopp bemoaned Liverpool having to travel to Burnley on Boxing Day, saying he wouldn't want to spend Christmas there. And he certainly won't be coming back next year for a return visit, blah, blah. I can see it. I can see Henry's intro already. You're right.
Yeah.
Lots of
We are
wailing
getting
and
awful
gnashing of
excited.
veneers.
He needs a welcome to Burnley Jurgen flag, doesn't it, when he comes out?
Yeah.
Club shop they missed a trick there. Yeah, 25.
We designed one for him, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
He's just
I mean, did you say he's just a bit of a dick on it? But I'm sure we could have, found something to replace it with. But
the ultra positive thing is like Boxing Day is always a good game on the turf. Always a good feeling going on the game on the turf, isn't it? And it's so different when you go on with a spring in your step after a performance and a win like that. So at least we'll start the game, in the mood, thinking, we're a team who can win Premier League games and we could pull off an upset here. Yeah. Let's move on to something that we talked about in the last episode that we promised you. Justin wasn't able to be with us to discuss his all-time 11, all-time favourite 11, I repeat again. We had a fantastic reaction to it. It's been brilliant the last couple of days looking on social media and seeing everyone sending in their teams and their favourite players and honourable mentions. We'll go through a few of those in a bit, but we wanted Justin to have a chance to talk about his selections. So go ahead, Justin. Who's in goal in the Justin Connolly all-time Burnley favourites 11?
Well, I have to say that there aren't many players in this lineup that we haven't mentioned before, so I'm going to skip through this reasonably quickly. I think on the face of it, it's quite difficult to follow Woody's 11, which when I listened to it back, that's just a masterpiece, isn't it? It was wonderful. I loved it. So I feel a bit. I feel a bit like I can't follow that. Marlon Beresford's my goalkeeper, not for the shirt, but more for the chant. Do you remember we co-opted the "Ooh Cantona" chant and repurposed it for Marlon Beresford? Ooh Beresford. I mean, it don't.
When you put it like that now,
it doesn't quite have the same ring as "Ooh Cantona," does it? But I just thought that was brilliant, like typical Burnley, and really quite funny as well with it. But I think Beresford was one of those players who, during that period, I always felt like he was a bit too good to be playing for Burnley, and he was a little bit of a sign of things to come. We come up from the fourth division, and we were, Jimmy Mullen was trying to build a squad that, well, we did go up again, didn't we? But that period, I thought Beresford was like, we were lucky to have him, weren't we? He was a great goalkeeper, and it always and it was, looking back on it now, it was a sign of things to come, because I feel like that period between Jimmy Mullen and Dyche was like, it was a process of incremental improvement, and Beresford to me represents like the first sort of step in that sort of getting players who you were like, oh, this guy's playing for Burnley, amazing. So he's my goalkeeper. He's not a clean sweep though, is he? Other people had other keepers.
Yeah. Me and Chris both had Tom Eaton, I think.
Yeah. So let's go into the defence now then. My right back, I think, is the same as Greaves's, Gary Parkinson. Just for that goal at Wembley, really, we can see it, take a deflection and bobble in. That celebration, it's indelibly. When you're a football fan, you have these moments, don't you, over the years that you just remember forever, and you can see it playing over and over again. That goal going in, it was one of those moments for me. So he's in for that reason. My left back's Joe Jacob, just for his elegant. I think I'm the only person who's picked him, and I've picked him solely on the basis of his elegant moustache. Which was a sight to behold. I mean, I think he was probably a bit of an unsung hero of that kind of, solid, dependable. He was, that fourth division championship winning side. He was the left back there, wasn't he? I think he was great. My let's get on to the central defenders then. So Steve Davis, Mark II, is one of mine. So I think
all five for Steve Davis.
All five have picked him.
Yeah.
For exactly the same reasons that everyone else has gone for him. A proper sort of elegant ball-playing central defender. adept at turning defence into attack, and really a sort of mainstay of a lot of the good things that happened at Burnley over that period. I was going to pair him with Ben Mee, because I think every sort of elegant ball-playing central defender needs a proper stopper next to them.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to. I'm going to go with John Pender because, well, apart from the fact that his name rhymes with defender, which is reason enough to pick him, Steve Davis is not the player he was without John Pender stood next to him. And let's not forget, he was the captain of that Fourth Division Championship winning side. He was the captain when we went up again a couple of seasons later in the playoffs. So John Pender's the man.
I like that one. Yeah.
Mr. Dependable. Sits next to Steve Davis and allows Steve Davis to be the player that Steve Davis was. So you got to give him a lot of credit for that. Right, let's get into the midfield then. So on my right-hand side, I've got Trevor Steven.
Yeah, I went for that one.
You went for that one as well, for the same reasons that you did, really. He was a gem, wasn't he? We were at the time, he was, I think we won, we got promoted, didn't we, with him in the side? I think we won the third division title.
Yeah.
With him in the side. But he was quite clearly head and shoulders above everybody else in that team. A proper talent, went on to prove that he was that as well. We were coming off the end of, we still had a few of the sort of old 1970s glory days player. I think you picked Martin Dobson, wasn't you? I think he was in that team as well.
He was.
But we were just about heading into that sort of real sort of downturn in the sort of mid to late 80s, and Trevor Steven was the last sort of thing we were able to really sort of celebrate. I don't know if you were there, Simon. I remember after we'd sold him to Everton, taking a trip to Everton, to Goodison Park, to watch them play, and for some reason I've got it in my head that it was.
I think you're right.
I think it might have been a Higham Boys FC thing that you. I think
you're right. I think it was like that trip with Damage that we took to Blackburn that we talked about. It was. No, we went. My dad used to like doing those on a Saturday sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, we went to Everton specifically to carry on watching Trevor Steven.
Yeah.
So he's in on the right hand side. Left hand side, I can't look at anybody apart from Leighton James, my boyhood idol. Such a fantastically talented, direct footballer. I don't think we saw him at his best in those last two sort of spells he had with the club, but he's the player whose number I have got on the back of the shirt that I've still got from when I was 10 years old, the number 11. Fantastic player.
Yeah.
Central midfield, I think I've gone a bit wild card compared to you guys. I've got Adrian Randall in there. He was one of those players. He was so talented. He was such a fantastic footballer with such skill. I mean, I remember one of the most entertaining things I ever saw him do wasn't even during a game. It was during the pre-game warm-up. I watched him do keepy-ups round the touchline, literally all the way round the pitch. And I'm sure that's got to be some sort of world record. I mean, I don't think he ever really fulfilled his potential. He was a much better player than he ever managed to prove on the pitch. But
no, he certainly didn't achieve his potential. But you're right. When he was playing for Burnley, you thought this is a guy who could end up playing for Arsenal or someone.
Yeah. He had that, undefinable class, didn't he?
I think a lot of that team always said that they always thought Adi Randall would go on and be. I think Roger might have even mentioned it on the podcast, or it might have been when we were chatting before or after. He just said, that guy was just, he could have gone to the very top, but it just never worked out. But did he become a postman afterwards?
Stayed local, yeah. He was.
I think he became a postman, didn't he? I hope he had a better performance than our postman the other day, who delivered all of the mail one house early. Absolute madness. I'm not sure if it really Randall and he were doing kick-ups. So
you're absolutely delighted there were a segue into having a go at Royal Mail there.
No, they're prioritising parcels, apparently, my neighbour said. I mean, it don't matter. They're still in his hand and he posts them in the wrong door. all the way up the street. Everybody's post was one too
See,
early.
we've got nothing to whinge about today, have we? We've won 2-0 at Fulham.
I know. I had all
We're
my
having an
Christmas shopping
enjoyable
done by
nostalgia
8
session.
this morning.
There's got to be a whinge about something.
We need to, instead of Adrian Randall delivering your post, we need to get Andy Farrell in there, don't we? He's much more dependable and much more reliable.
Exactly. But Eddie Randall, I remember Eddie Randall. I remember him doing that trick at an open day as well, walking all around. And I don't know if it was part of some kind of world record attempt, but I have vague memories of him opening the Bob Lord stand for an open training session, him attempting to do it all the way around the pitch on that as well.
Would not be surprised if he wasn't still doing it now. But it's a shame he didn't play more. But next to him, in the centre of midfield, I've actually got Jack Cork, which I don't think anybody else picked either.
I was close to Jack Cork,
but
in and out of various formulations.
I think just like a massive part of the Sean Dyche era, and another a bit like in the way we talk about Beresford. We had him on loan, didn't we? A bit. For a season or two before he actually signed, and I remember thinking, "Whoa! If we're signing players like this now, then, things are going in the right direction." He seems to be a lot better than we had. A really key player in that season. We qualified for Europe as well, I think. I've got like a flashy, skillful, stylish creator, and Jack Cork, who's doing. As much as I love these sort of creative players, I do love the players who quietly just get on with the job and make the team tick over. And I think Jack Cork's been absolutely fantastic at that for us.
It's a nice pairing, is that? I like that. I think there's a nice balance in that pair in there. Like Greaves's version, which was what Adrian Heath dropping and Robbie Blake alongside him on the right, and For
the last 5-6 years, Burnley have been better when Jack Cork's been playing. Let's put it that way. So that's why he makes my team.
Right, who's up front then? Tricky one.
Up front, there's about 50 players I could have picked. I'll be honest. I've gone for Danny Ings. I don't know if I was surprised nobody else picked him. Such an exciting player to watch. Really direct, really quick, good eye for goal. Struck up that fantastic partnership with Sam Vokes as well. But also he was engaged with the community off the field as well. So that's sort of part of the reason why he gets the nod for me. Of course, he's still playing, isn't he? But I was disappointed by what happened to him after he left. You couldn't begrudge him a move away, but all the injuries he's had, I don't think he quite became the player he could have been. I think he could have been a star for England if he hadn't had all those knee problems that he had. But still a really, really exciting player to watch. A really exciting time for the club. My final selection, I can't look again like you, Sam. I can't look any further than Billy Hamilton. I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult for people who don't remember this kind of thing to really imagine. But football in the old days, in the 70s and 80s, when you're watching it on TV, I don't know if you remember, the quality of the video and the audio, it was so poor that it felt really like you were watching a game that was being played out on another planet, never mind another country. Do you know what I mean? Those European games and World Cups and it was like, it sounded like it was being beamed live from the moon or something like that. So that 82 World Cup in Spain, it felt about as exotic as anything can look to a 12-year-old boy from Burnley. And to see Billy Hamilton, the guy that we watch at Turf Moor every other week, see him playing and scoring goals. I mean, I think I'm not sure if this is right, but I think he was the first ever Burnley player to score at a World Cup finals in that tournament. Yeah. Oh, it was just magical. It was just magical. So he gets in my team for that, and that's my 11.
I like that 11. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. It's good. It's good that some players like Cork and Ings and Pender, who've all popped up in various listeners' 11s, and there's so many of them. We can't go through all of them, unfortunately, because it's just been overwhelming on Twitter, Facebook, and on the Clarets message board. But I just rolled through a few of them. who've mentioned players that we haven't mentioned. So let's consider them the fans' honourable mentions.
Okay.
I think Dean Marney appeared in quite a few. I think if you're of a certain generation, Dean Marney's contribution in central midfield is obviously something that made an impact for the club at that time. I could totally understand why people went for him. Peter Noble, from people from more of our generation, or maybe a touch older than us, remembering Peter Noble, who was Mr. Burnley, really, wasn't he, at that time? He really skipper.
Quality. Bought many a Burnley shirt from him on his stall on Burnley Market Hall.
Couldn't buy a Northern Ireland shirt, though, during that 1982 World Cup. I was going to say that. And that's the different times. You're right. The TV looked completely different. But also, we were going out playing with a ball afterwards, pretending to be, Jerry Armstrong and Billy Hamilton scoring goals for Northern Ireland. And that white Northern Ireland shirt with green pinstripes, the away shirt that they wore, I think they wore that in the game against Spain. I don't think they wore green, unless I'm misremembering. But you couldn't get it anywhere. You couldn't buy shirts in those days like you can now.
Uwe missed a trick there, didn't he? He could have retired on that.
Yeah. I'm looking around. There's a few. There's George Boyd and Scott Arfield getting a mention. I think if you grew up, and somebody mentioned to this, that we all have a little bit of a bias towards our first sort of heroes and our first favourites a little bit. And if you've grown up watching Burnley in the Premier League era, then Scott Arfield would be in there, wouldn't he? And probably George Boyd as well. So that was good to see.
I think a lot of that. I think a lot of that is what Justin was saying about kind of Gary Parkinson and moments. I think it's Arfield versus Rovers and the run to the Burnley. I think it's Boyd versus City. We think about that. I included Robbie Blake probably because of the United game. That goal. So it's that. Sometimes it's them moments in it that it just sticks with you. It's either your first hero. It's that you remember where you were when Boyd hit that kind of daisy cutter after Company's kind of poor header at the back. How many times have we seen that? Over this kind of this season. So I think sometimes it's them moments. But yeah, Marnie definitely. I think he was probably close to quite a few people's 11s of people from that era, if you will.
Liam Preston as a team that is very similar to a lot of the teams that we've done. But he has Kevin Ball in midfield, which is an interesting one.
Solid.
Proper. We do. I mean, we love wingers and we love flair players and stuff, but we do love a hard man in midfield as well, don't we?
Yeah,
Alan Stevenson got in a few.
Tackling it.
Alan Stevenson was keeper in quite a few. And
see that.
You can totally see why. So there's loads that Willie Donachie was thrown in as a left back. And I think that's one of the few. I think he was probably the only one of those John Bond signings from Man City. Was he a John Bond signing from Man City, or was he just before that? He might have been just before that. I'm not sure on that. To check afterwards. But those ex-Man City players who played for us in that era, let's put it that way. I mean, Tommy Hutchinson hung around and was brilliant at times, but the only one who really, established himself at the club was probably Willie Donachie, and he was a very good footballer. So loads. Ian Martin getting into one selection with Muric in goal. So I think that's one of our younger listeners there. But, here we go. We've got one that's from an older listener who has the likes of Colin Waldron, John Kennelly, Jimmy McElroy, which makes me think, and when I saw that list, and that's Claret Tony's list for those who use the message board, it made me think we need to do an episode sometimes, maybe during an international break, where we get on some people who really knew that team in the 1960s and talk about some of those players, because they were the England international. They were playing in the European Cup. They were champions of England,
Yeah.
And there's people of our generation, we heard about it from our parents, but there's people younger than us who probably don't know a lot about these guys at all. So it'd be really good to try and get a good a good guest on sometime. And
if only Simon, your dad, and my dad were still around to talk about that. That would be fascinating, wouldn't it?
It would be a great dad's episode, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure Tony will appreciate you outing him for being as old as he is to remember that side. But I think
you were a young supporter in early 60s.
I was going to say I think he was probably a toddler, weren't he? Let's just leave it at that for Tony. But yeah, I think you're right. I think I remember interviewing Jimmy when I was at the Burnley Express when they brought out the Kings of Europe video, and we went to a screening and Jimmy was there, and I was just because I'd heard my dad talk about that, and my granddad, and you just kind of think, what a player. And it's a different era. Justin talked about 82 being kind of exotic and things like that. Seeing some of that European footage, the Napoli footage and all that lot, it's just incredible, isn't it? And what a history we've got as a football club. And you think about those players. I remember seeing Jimmy a few years later at his house on Rosal Avenue, and he had a picture just inside his front door of him, George Best, and Willie Irving, all being carried off the pitch on shoulders. And I think it was his last game for Northern Ireland. So he was a bit older, and obviously, George was slightly younger, and Willie Irving was the youngest of the three. But the three of them were being carried off the pitch on supporters' shoulders after a game, and he had this frame just at his front door, and I think it was a gift from Willie Irving, actually, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, and there's that team of the early 70s as well that was just before our time with the youth team that came through, and most of them got sold on. But players like Dave Thomas and so on, and obviously Ralph Coates was around at that sort of time as well, that we didn't see and couldn't include in our lists, but who we should talk about at some stage as well. One thing we did say we were going to do, and before we forget, let's quickly do it, was who's going to manage our teams, our all-star favourite teams. So. Greavsey, who's in charge of your side? Who's got to persuade Adrian Heath to do a bit of work in midfield behind that?
Stan Turnant. I'm going big Stan. Yeah, I think he was, for me, I think there's been a couple of times in our history when I've thought to myself, the chairman at the time should just drive up Brunshaw Road and go and knock on Stan's door. And I genuinely thought it after Coyle left to go to Bolton. I genuinely thought that we'd have been quite well placed had we gone up the road to the Kettle Drum, popped his head around the door, see if Stan was in having a quick pint, and just said, "Do you fancy 6 months?" I don't think we'd have been in any worse position than we were going out and spending what we ended up spending on the Brian Laws experiment by giving him a big contract for a couple of years and then having to pay him off a little bit later. So yeah, it's Stan for me.
Yeah, I think people would have rallied around if Stan had come in. Then he'd have got the crowd behind him. Woody, your team had a few left field choices that has sparked some debate online. Who would be in charge of bringing together and making sure
John Bond,
Joe Gallagher,
John Bond. He turned this club around. Wrong way around. Turn it around. Oh.
Somebody's going to get the best out of Joe Gallagher in your
Exactly. If it's not John, it's not anyone, is it? Can I have a management team? Can we go with like Harry Potts as the main man, Daesh as the defensive coordinator, young Vincent as the offensive coordinator, and Jimmy Hogan, as we've been talking about, that team from the 60s, as kind of first team coach? And leave it
that sounds like a dream team, doesn't it?
There you go.
Yeah. Jimmy Hogan. We need to do a Jimmy Hogan episode sometime as well. Yeah. Justin, who's in charge?
There's only one man for me. It's got to be Jimmy Mullen, hasn't it? I mean, six of my players are in that are from that era. So I think Jimmy's going to get the best out of them. I have to say, like I said before, I view the whole thing as a process, and these individuals that have been entrusted with the managing the club. All stand on the shoulders of the guys who came before them. So I think Jimmy's team was more or less Frank Casper's team, wasn't it, with a couple of additions. So and then without Jimmy doing what he did, there's no prospect of Stan Turnant coming in and building on that. And then Cottrell comes in and builds again. That team that Owen Coyle took up, that's built on the shoulders of what went before him, and then everything that we see now is a result of the incremental process of improvement that's taken on since that time. But I think Jimmy Mullen, for me, had the biggest impact at a time when, we just turned the corner from like the worst sort of 10 years of my life as a Burnley fan, and that success we had under him was a real catalyst, I think, that eventually propelled us into the Premier League and what we are doing now. Yeah,
absolutely. You mentioned him, but I beforehand, when I was thinking about it, I thought for my team as well, I've got to go with Frank Casper, because I think he's vastly underrated what he did, and that team that got out of the third division played some fantastic football. I mean, they really did, and at that time, I think he had a really good tactical mind to switch at that time when it wasn't yet fashionable to play. It became fashionable to play with sweeper a year or two after that. But at the time, he went to play. How do I get the best out of Martin Dobson at the end of his career? I'm going to play him as a sweeper behind Phelan and Overson. I've got two young fullbacks who've got lungs, so they can just overlap. And they were like Dixon and Winterburn later were for Arsenal. Laws and Wharton used to just, bomb on like crazy. Andy Wharton, by the way, honourable mention, as a favourite. It was like having a lad from the long side running about on the field every week. It was fantastic. But I think with Billy Hamilton in my team and Trevor Stephen, I think Frank Casper would have got the best out of him. Probably with Brian Miller as assistant. They usually work the other way around, didn't they?
Yeah.
They usually work the other way around. And I think Frank, I always felt sorry for Frank Casper, because when we went up, that team he had that did really well and got far in the cup competitions, didn't it? But we went down, and he just and he's told people, I think, that he was very close to getting. He wanted two players to come in that would have been enough to just shore us up, and that we didn't go down. And the board didn't back him. He lost his job. John Bond came in. The money was suddenly found, and the rest is history. And we went back into another spell of decline. But anyway, Frank Casper, I think, vastly underrated as a coach. Always played nice football as well. Right. We've had another long one there, and a very enjoyable one again. It's always more enjoyable with a 2-0 win at Fulham under your belt. And we look forward to Boxing Day. Obviously, we all look forward to Christmas beforehand. So a very, very Merry Christmas to all our listeners who have been so active with us in the last week or two, without soaring up the charts and starting to get some really good feedback online. And those teams that you sent in really gave us a lot of enjoyment seeing all those. Have a great Christmas with your family. Enjoy Boxing Day. We'll be back with a debrief on that Liverpool game. And not sure exactly when. Bear with us a bit on that, but we'll let you know on social media when it's done and it's going out, hopefully as soon as we can after that game on Boxing Day. Have a great time, and up the Clarets. Cheers.
Jimmy McElroy to Upton. Go.